Green Team Academy Podcast, episode 72. In this episode, I'm going to be talking with Deb Matlock of Wild Rhythms, and our whole focus is we've been thinking about you and thinking about all the stuff that you're going through right now and all the things that you might be able to do in this historic opening. And your ability to do that is really going to hinge on your personal resilience. So your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual strength right now. And so that's what we're going to be talking about, is how to use wild rhythms. So leaning on nature's rhythms during this time to build your personal resilience. And I want to tell you about a few other things. First is that we're going to be doing a happy hour on animal connections and personal resilience on April 13th, 2020, as part of the Earth Week Summit. So if you haven't already signed up for that, check out earthweeksummit.com. And another thing is that my book is coming out in June 2020. I am recruiting for people that want to be on my advanced reader crew. So if you're interested in that, go to greenteamacademy.com/books and you will see information about that and how to apply. The name of that book is Climate Action Breakthrough, Creating the World We Want, One Team at a Time. And finally, I've got a new program going where it's kind of an action plan in a day. And so if you've been thinking of starting something and you want to hit the ground running and have, it's kind of like a business plan for your movement. So really just thinking through what are those key things that you need to identify, and what I'm going to be sharing are the steps that are going to help you avoid wasting years, maybe decades, because the thing is we don't really have that time anymore to mess around. So if you're like, you know what, this is a historic opening, I want to start something right now, then you can reach out to me. There'll be information on the website, greenteamacademy.com. If you don't see what you're looking for, then just go under the contact and send me a note as I'm getting everything set up there. All right. So with that, take a deep breath, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Green Team. I really appreciate that. And let's get started. Hey, Green Team, what's up? Oh my goodness, so great to hang out with you. And especially in these times where we're doing our physical distancing, it's nice that we don't have to do social distancing. We can still hang out like this. So anyhow, so nice to be here with you, and been thinking about you a lot as I'm hearing all these different stories, and that is exactly where our podcast today, you'll be meeting Deb Matlock from Wild Rhythms. The reason we're doing this is because I've been thinking, we are going through just this unprecedented shift, this moment in human history that nobody in living history has been through, where so much has changed so quickly with people all around the world. And yet at the same time, a lot of those things that we normally would turn to keep us kind of happy and feeling good aren't available. And also, we're doing the Earth Week Summit, which is coming up, and this is going April 10th to 18th, and this is all online, free, with all these workshops and happy hours, and we're going to be talking about climate change. And so, it's not enough that you already have a pandemic and all this other stuff to be concerned about, but we're also asking you to break your heart open and be thinking about animals and oceans and air pollution and all the different things that we're seeing and what the solutions are that people are bringing. But I know it's a lot to handle. And so that's why I invited Deb to join me today. And we're just going to be talking about some ways that you can connect with nature to help you through this, because of course that's what we're all about, protecting. And then toward the end, we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of what we're doing on the happy hour for Monday, April 13th, that is. We'll be diving into this more on the happy hour and give you some activities to do. But hopefully that gets you excited to do this, to think about having a new tool in your toolkit. So with that, I just want to say thanks so much, Deb, for joining me, and hello.
Hello, thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really honored to be here and a chance to talk with the awesome folks that are on the Green Team Cafe and the group and coming to the summit.
Deb, I didn't even really do a quick intro, so would you like to do that? Just start by telling people what it is that you do. I love that. I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, the cool thing about Deb is she doesn't really fit into any specific box that I know about, which is why I reached out to you. But yeah, let's just start by give a quick intro of what do you help people with? What's kind of your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Deb Matlock, and I've been in the field of environmental education for about 25 years. And I've got a business called Wild Rhythms where I do nature connection workshops and retreats and other kinds of programs, as well as shamanic style journey work and animal communication work, working with people one-on-one as well, all within the umbrella of deep and sacred connection to the life around us. So that's the common theme through all of that. But it's definitely in my heart, the work of the Green Team and all the organizations involved. It's, ways that people are connecting and interacting with the natural world is the most important things I think we can be doing right now, for sure.
I feel like we should take a couple minutes and just really kind of lay it out there on the table of what are you seeing that people are dealing with. And I think this is one of the things is we don't even know, because we're not even able to bump into and share stories with just the number of people whose lives have been upended. But let's just take a minute or two and just kind of catalog some of that so that we're accepting, wow, this is really big. So do you want to start, and then maybe I'll pitch in too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the things I've been hearing from folks I've been working with and the things I've been feeling myself relate to the magnitude of the unknown and the mystery here that we're dealing with like this pandemic, on top of climate change, on top of the fact that the other side of this coin is that I feel like this pandemic has showed us how deeply interconnected we are, and it's almost like the difficult side of connection. It's the part that isn't as romantic as sitting out in the trees and feeling the benefits of nature. This is the other part of the fact that we are so connected, and it's very overwhelming. And I've spoken with many people who are saying, I don't know what my role is anymore. I had been doing X, Y, or Z, education, teaching, or working in this recycle center, or now I'm not sure what my role needs to be because it just feels so huge and overwhelming. And so I think part of it is that we're up against this existential event that almost exceeds our capacity to fully grasp, at least right now. It may be that in a few years we can look back, but for all of us in it today, I think the thing I'm seeing is people saying, I don't even know what to think or what to do.
Yeah, that's something different. And I feel like it's kind of like in the beginning of climate change, when people started talking about climate change, that was different than, a polluted river, or some of the other environmental issues the way we used to think about it. And that's why we do have, we're going to have a lot of discussions in the summit about the links between the ways we think about climate change and the pandemic, including the author of the book American Pandemic about the 1918 flu, and lots of different people kind of touching on that. But I think, yeah, that's an interesting way to say it, is that we don't even really have a framework as a starting point. And so, yeah, you would feel off balance. And the other part that's been, there's so many dimensions to this, but I think just the immediate thing of job losses and school losses, and people, whether everybody that you talk to has something that they had planned that just, I was just talking to somebody who was planning to take the LSAT to get into law school, and just thinking about all the people that have worked so hard to do something, and they're just all that's going away. So whether you're, it's your school and you're getting ready to graduate, or if you're, planning a trip, or, but just the basic economic crash to so many people. And the other thing is, I was just reading something this morning on Twitter from one of the journalists who was just had so much information about how, like in certain cities that are reporting the data for coronavirus, where the Black communities are getting hit much harder. So the percentage of mortalities, of fatalities, are higher per population, per capita, in one city, and another is people that are have different disabilities are suffering, and people. I'm thinking about when I was in Ghana, and when I stayed with my friend there, there was 4 of us in a room, and then one more person just showed up one day who had nowhere to live, and so then we were 5 in a room. And so I think that's the other thing, is we've been talking about with climate change, how it's the wealthier countries that have more so caused it, and the less affluent countries and communities of color that are already suffering and are bound to more. So I think when you read that, it just like, this is all the stuff that we've been working on. It's just amplified in, thousands.
Yeah, I saw an article that was talking about social distancing being a privilege, and it really hit me because I realized that's exactly it. If you actually have a situation where you can create the space and live at home and have the groceries and be away from people, there are so many parts of this world where that distance is not an option. And I think that those are the overwhelming. I mean, I sit in my heart, and there are days I've in the last couple of weeks where I have this big to-do list. I have all these things I'm working on, and I can't make any headway because I'm just kind of adjusting and in shock, or, in an emotional feeling, grief, or feeling helpless, and it's like cleaned out things like my pantry and stuff, because it was something I could do and I could see it and I could touch it. And it's like, oh, now it's organized. Okay, phew, I've got some control somewhere, because it just feels so huge. I think that I really appreciate that you're bringing this up at the beginning of the summit for folks, because I think it is something that if we just all know that whatever unique ways we are addressing, this is happening. And everyone's dealing with things similarly and differently, but it's all very real, and it's all, it can't be backburnered and ignored. It's too big.
Part about people feeling, I want to say there's a lot to celebrate, but and I think that's even another issue, is that when you see a good thing happening, you feel bad because of all the people suffering. So we don't even really have a good way to, I think, have those kind of nuanced conversations. But things like, dolphins appearing in canals that have been polluted, and people seeing the stars for the first time in London in however many years, and also people just feeling a lot of connection, and people are baking and sewing and learning new things, so there's a lot of and just like bonding with your own family at home, or figuring those things out. I heard somebody saying, you're going to probably feel like you love your family more than ever, and you hate them. You hate them more than ever. And that's okay. But just like the intensity, I think, because we have been able to kind of run away, go do stuff, the intensity of all this has been pretty wild. And so we don't want to stay too long with that, but just acknowledging that racism and poverty, the criminal justice system, and homeless, and your own things that are happening, this is a lot. This is really a lot to process. And so then the next thing we wanted to mention was just also acknowledging that the tools that you might have been using might not be available anymore. So it's kind of a perfect storm for, a lot of personal crises during this time of crises. I know for me, my thing was I'd go to the gym, I'd go to Zumba classes, I would go, do hikes with groups of friends, and I don't realize until now, like how much I liked just walking to the store and back.
Yeah.
All those things that I was doing that aren't available, or pieces of them are. How about you, Deb? What have you noticed?
No, I would say I can relate quite a lot. I work at home and I enjoy being at home. So, however, there are a lot of little things that I would do, hiking or going to a class with my dog, and, fun dog things, or the yoga studio, or even just casually going to the grocery store and taking my time and, letting that be a relaxing thing, figuring out what do I need, and all of those things being different. It is very unsettling. And what you said a second ago too about the looking at the potentials and the excitements and then feeling bad that we do that. I've been really feeling a lot of that too, because I think, there are some incredible potential things that can come out of this. And none of that means, if somebody's in that space saying, oh, I could see the value, or, oh, there's decreased this pollution, or maybe we can increase our sense of community on the other side of this. It doesn't mean, having those thoughts doesn't mean that we're happy about all the pain and suffering and loss. It just sort of means accepting this is the situation. So, being okay with looking for those things. I find that to be a challenge too, because there are days it's like I start to think about that, and then I think, oh, is this okay to be doing that right now? And it's like, well, I can't do anything else but stay home right now. So I guess, I'm doing everything. Yeah. So I think you're right. It's that unsettling of the day-to-day routine, but also the unsettling of experience of what is it okay to think or feel, or, is it appropriate to be philosophical or not? I mean, that it's a weird tension,
I didn't even mention like all the people that are used to going to school and work and all those things that you would do where you'd bump into people, and the same, it's kind of those water cooler moments, or, seeing your teacher or seeing your coworkers and sharing. I think that's the other part, of sharing those stories. All right. So that's good. So just wanted to kind of, acknowledge like this is a super crazy time, and we also are left without some of the things that we would normally be doing. And even just the ways of how to think about this. So there's certainly lots of things you can do to build your personal resilience. But let's think about nature as a tool. And I hate to even use the word tool, because it's maybe like it's our master or our teacher or our healer. Like it kind of defies words, but anyhow, let's go ahead, and we're going to start with that. And then we're going to give you the preview of the animal connection activities that we're going to do in the happy hour. So what would you say is kind of a way that people could, if they're starting to feel stressed out and they think, oh, I could probably do something with nature. Like how would you even think about that? And where would people start?
Yeah, I think honestly, we can start by thinking of, we're supposed to be 6 feet apart from each other at least, right? But within that 6 feet, there's so much life, no matter where we are, whether we're sitting in a park or we're walking out the front door of our apartment building, or where we are, so going outside and just taking a moment and taking that breath and saying, okay, who's here? Who is here with me in my community? There's birds, there's pieces of grass, there's little blooms, as spring is starting here in Colorado. I don't know where everybody's coming from, but there are little buds of tulips and crocuses and things that, depending on where you are, just taking that moment and saying, who is here with me? This could take 30 seconds and it could take 3 hours, so if somebody needs to sit down outside and just say, who is in my community right now that I can be so close to? And, am I going to watch this bird bounce around this tree? And am I going to sit here and watch the clouds? It sounds so simple, but I think at times like this, especially for a lot of us who work in environmental fields, sometimes the simple low-hanging fruit, if you will, is the easiest to forget, which is that deep breath and that just acknowledging that life is here. And I can say I have felt so much comfort in the last couple of weeks seeing spring starting here in Colorado. And whether that means it's a snowstorm or not, just going outside, and each day there's something different. The tulip is a little bit taller. They're starting on certain plants. There's a little bit more activity from birds. There's squirrels are starting to do all of their fun stuff in the trees, making their little dance of who's going to hook up with who, I think. And, those little moments that feel so familiar, I think for us, when we're looking for resilience, can go a long way, especially for people whose heart is already with the environment and is already with nature, and whose concerns already lie there. Letting ourselves realize that we are part of a community that is human and so much more, and that community is not rocked right now, that it is still there.
That is a really great way to think about it, that, as you were saying, even if you're in line somewhere and you're 6 feet apart, standing in line to get into the grocery store or something like that, you still have access to clouds and the feel of the ground under your feet, and maybe an ant walking by, or the view of a tree that's maybe starting to blossom that you didn't notice, and to not feel alone in that whole thing. I went the other day. I've been trying to figure out where can I go that wouldn't be as crowded, that I can walk, just to remove a risk for somebody else and give me a place, kind of spread out a bit. And I was walking by a river and I was thinking, the river hasn't changed, that the river's still doing the river thing. And, it's not on lockdown. And so to be thinking about, the squirrels aren't on lockdown, the birds, the clouds, the budding trees, that's so much. So that's really a comfort to see those natural cycles. And so rhythms is one of the things that you talk about, and that's in your title. And I was thinking about that this morning after we started talking about it, because before this happened, I was on this serious routine where I was going to the gym 6 days, one day cardio, one day upper body, then cardio. And it was just it was amazing. And I was just running at this level. And now I read somebody's doing core and training, and I'm like, wow, they're running. I'm not really there. if I get a walk in, I'm pretty excited about it. So what is that idea of rhythms? How can we think about that? How does that relate to making this something part of our resilience routine?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I can say that the rhythmic connection to nature is something that I've personally relied on even before the pandemic, and I'm so grateful for it now. So I'll give an example which might make people think about how they could use this, where if I feel myself had a few meetings, a ton of email, maybe the phone's been ringing, and I just feel like, okay, I need a break. If I go step outside, and even again, a minute or two, there's a breeze in the leaves, for example, and just stand there and try to breathe with the tree, breathe with the breeze, slow the breath down. Or if there's clouds moving slowly, just trying to say, okay, what does it feel like if I were to put myself on that cloud and be moving at that pace? Or if you've got a lake or a creek or something nearby, sometimes the little ripples on the water surface or the creek moving, sitting there and saying, I'm going to sit here until I feel like these gentle ripples are the feeling I have in my own heart. And I've had times in my life where sitting by a lake, there was some stressful times at work or something where it might be an hour or more, breathing with the ripples. But boy, I can tell you that it's grounding, and it's free and it's easy, and you don't have to go to a closed trailhead or a wilderness area. You can literally walk right outside and just say, what is the rhythm right now? Is it a little bird that's bopping around, and you just sort of want to be in the space and feel, what is that rhythm? It could be, it looks frenetic, but sometimes if we dig into it, it's actually a little calmer. I've done this with hummingbirds where, you would think, okay, these little guys are just zip, 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 zip. What I find is if I'm breathing into it and really focusing on what is their rhythm, it actually slows mine down. It's sort of a reality check for where I've been putting myself. If a hummingbird is a calming thing, then I don't know, is that a sign? For who are we connected to in our landscapes, and what rhythm are they living in, and what does it feel like to think about that rhythm within ourselves, whether it's a tree or a bird or a body of water or a bee. I mean, anything. Butterflies are very fun because they do a lot of stopping and then fluttering and stopping. So a fun, easy way, this can be as you're walking from your car to, the store, or like you were saying, waiting in line to go into something, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a big undertaking. It can go a long way, I think, especially people whose hearts are already with the natural world. It can go a long way to reminding us that we are part of all of this. We are part of the natural world, and that isn't changed, and that is not on lockdown. Our natural being status is fully intact right now.
That's a really comforting thought, because we do say things like the world's on lockdown. and honestly, like it's pretty wild. I was texting with somebody that I know from when I was in Saudi Arabia, and he's in Saudi, and he's like, we're on lockdown. And then I was like, how's your family in Nepal? Great, they're on lockdown. So yeah, that's a good point, that we could change the way we talk about it. So, the world being on lockdown could be like, well, humans, this is what humans are doing. But as we've seen, that nature is still out there doing its nature things and repairing things while we're in our homes, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really been funny. I'm part of this program where we're writing a book, and I just did a 3-day retreat, and they were saying, we are lucky because our books come out in June, but books that just came out in February might be less relevant.
Oh, right.
Because the way we talk about things has completely changed. And with the summit too, it started as grassroots action, and then I kind of got a message about, well, let's make sure that it's positive. So it's grassroots action, or climate action celebration. So that was cool. And then the pandemic happened. So then online became the most important descriptor.
Right.
And then a few weeks later, online didn't become important, because if it wasn't online, it wasn't happening. But the current tagline, it might change tomorrow, but is creating the world we want. I think this one's gonna stick, because it is like, oh, if we don't have work and school and all these things, then I heard the governor of New York saying, people are asking me, when are we going to get back to normal? We're not going back. That's not going to be our normal anymore. So it is a real opportunity, but I think we also feel, especially those of us that have cared about the environment for a long time and seen things not happening, that we're thinking, oh, well, maybe there's this opening, but now we need to step up, and like, how am I going to do that when things are so crazy in my life? Connecting to the natural rhythms, I think that's a really beautiful thing. And all these things have that, like, the yin yang thing of, like, nature. On one hand, we're saying in a way it's kind of permanent, that the humans are all on lockdown, but it's still doing its thing. But of course, the thing about nature is it's always changing too. And so that gives us kind of a nice resting place to know it's there, but also know there's something that we can be kind of tuning into
Yeah.
at the same time.
And I think what you said about creating the world we want is the single most important thing we can be asking ourselves right now, because it isn't going to be the same, and we'd have no idea what that's going to mean. And either we're going to be conscious about what's on the other side or we're not. And so being conscious about it and saying, what is this world that going forward? I mean, that's big work, you know, and that's what, I mean, that's full on green team kind of work.
Right. It's fun, and we need to have that strength, the,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, to just
Right.
get that. So what's a tip that you would say, Deb, for, I feel like a lot of us have done a pretty good job of, okay, let's just stay at home. But then, I mean, I'm not used to doing like yoga routines in my whatever. I'm used to like going to a class or going, I know that just works better for me. So do you have a tip of how you could kind of tune into nature to encourage us to get, I'm not the only one I've heard this from that's like, doesn't feel like they're getting quite enough exercise to feel good. So what would be a way to think about the rhythms of nature that you think might give us or some other connections there? I mean, there might be other ways to do that, but if we just tackle that one idea, we're hunkered down. It's like we turn down our body temperature or something.
Right.
But then at the same time, it's like, oh my goodness, this is not a good this is fine for a week, but if this is several months, how do we jump our energy back up to get out there and get some exercise?
That's a good question. A couple things come to mind. One is going back to the rhythm thing. Whereas if somebody feels a rhythmic sort of connection with some animal or some being out in nature, it's sort of saying, okay, so why am I attracted to the sparrows? What is their rhythm? Is it how much rest versus activity? And then if we could experiment with mirroring that in our own lives, depending on how much flexibility we each have with our work at home versus job versus no job, we may have a good amount of flexibility to say, what does my day need to look like? And how do I feel that rhythm reflected in my world if I play with it? If I pretend to be the sparrow for a day, lots of activity in the morning, flurry, 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 sitting in the bushes in the afternoon, resting, more flurry later, that sort of thing could be a fun way to do that. I think another way, especially if exercise is taking place outdoors, is to say, okay, this is my chance to connect with all of these living beings up close. I don't have to stay away from the tree, the grass, the edge of the lake. I can be very intimately close to all of these things. And getting outside and going for the walks or the dogs or taking the dogs out and spending the time out, breathing the fresh air and being in those spaces. I think I can say for myself, my dogs are really helpful right now. They need walks every day. They're not aware of any of the stress that they probably feel some of the stress that we are feeling as humans, but they're not watching the news about pandemics, that's for sure. And just being out there and seeing what they're noticing and what they're smelling and what's in their ears over this direction. All of that, I think that getting out can potentially help us to feel that, okay, I am happier when I'm moving and doing a little bit and not glued to my computer watching the latest, tragic numbers increasing each day and all these things. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that when our routines get shifted, this is a time to say, all right, so who am I as a natural being? What are my natural rhythms that maybe I couldn't live within before because I had too many other obligations? And now maybe we all can ask that question a little bit differently. Do I need to stay up late or get up early? Do I need a rest in the afternoon, or is that when I feel ready to rock and roll? What is it? What are my rhythms? And then how are those rhythms reflected in the natural world? We are the natural world. So our rhythms do matter and they are out there. And so remembering that, I think, might be a helpful piece right now. Playing with it too, having fun with it, experimenting.
I guess we're the only animal that forgets that we're an animal.
Right.
I mean, I feel like whales are not going like, yes, I'm going to sit over here for the rest of the day and just think or, or read or like rearrange the whatever, the seashells or something, like they they get exercise, they move, they know this is like they don't even have to know it, they just are movement. And so I think that's another nice thing, is just to kind of remember we are animals and animals move. And
Yeah.
and so even in times of crisis, even if whatever else was happening, that if you're an animal, you still need that kind of movement, and that's what's going to help you feel good and be able to do this important work that we really want to do. I mean, this is an opportunity, that kind of the end of an era of something and the beginning of something else. And so the stronger that we can be moving into it. So I love that. And I know that Deb has a lot more ideas around this. We talked during the last year's summit about using plants and animal communication and all kinds of ways to connect on that kind of more spiritual and those other kind of deeper connections. The other thing I was going to say, one of the things I've been doing sometimes when I don't feel like getting out, is if I have a phone call, I will put my earphones in and put my shoes on. And I did this yesterday. Somebody called me and I said, "Oh, I forgot. Can I call you right back? I want to put my shoes on and my earphones in and get outside." And so, thinking about ways that those connections and the outdoors, if you can't just get yourself out there, maybe kind of that association, phone call, walk, and I guess what you're saying, Deb, is to also think about, exercise and animals. Like, okay, maybe they're your personal trainers now that you can't hire
Awesome. I love that. Yeah.
Like, the squirrels are my personal trainers. Let's go to the park and just see what they're doing and see if I can get some, form tips on.
And I think what you said is the key. Animals move and we are animals, and also productivity is not 100% anywhere in the natural world. So expecting ourselves to be 100% up every single day, the most beautiful flowers that bloom in the spring and summer had to go underground for a few months to be able to do that. And so I think also knowing that our creating the world that we want is going to also come to us in our inspiration and our impulses. And there's a cycle there too. There's a rhythm for all of that as well.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's what a lot of people are talking about too, is having that extra time and those, your schedule that's not all booked up. Especially, I think a lot of the parents who both parents are working, their kids are in school, and then they take them to this activity and that one and that one. And when that all disappeared, my friends that are fostering puppies, and the kids are learning how to do haircuts, like give each other haircuts, and, just things that, so that kind of downtime definitely is cathartic. And so I guess that's the other part of it, is to not put that pressure on yourself to be at that level of productivity or even activity, but to find something that is going to make you feel good. Okay, so is there anything more we should say that gives kind of a little insight into what we're going to do with the happy hour? Should we say a little bit more about that, or what are you thinking?
Well, we were talking about the happy hour being a chance to connect with each other, and then also dig a little more deeply into some of those deeper connections with animals, and pull a little bit more out of those than we sort of, hinted at here. So if folks are interested in that, we'll be spending more time on that Monday evening, the 13th, in that happy hour. And like you said, having a chance to connect and really see who else is involved in the summit will be a really fun thing too, I think.
And we were thinking, that like everybody loves animals and it's just like such a fun way to, if you think about an elephant or a a butterfly or something. It just brightens our spirits, and we need that. And so we'll be doing some kind of fun activities about flashing back to, what kind of animals did you like as a kid? And so thinking about that, their qualities and their rhythms, and then taking that a couple steps further and breaking out into small groups to work on that. And so we wanted to be kind of playful and fun, and yet, give you some tools so that you could feel better going forward as we're doing this exciting world of creating the world we want. So
Right.
if you're listening to this, if you haven't signed up yet for Earth Week Summit, it's just earthweeksummit.com. And we have so many amazing things happening with that. It's just getting better every day, and we've got all kinds of cool sponsors that are sharing the word with folks. So, and we have the Green Team Cafe, so you can hop in there and kind of continue the discussions in our Facebook group. I feel honored that I was planning this in early February, and before all these other events got canceled. So really happy that we're able to host everybody. And especially that our happy hour with Deb. So that's going to be fun. So any last little words of wisdom that you want to share before we sign off?
I would just say take that deep breath outside and say, who's here with me? Because we are so not alone right now. There's a lot of beings out there.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Deb. And remember, everybody, the time for action is now. And that action could be sign up for the Earth Week Summit. And the time for action is now, because there is no planet B. All right. Thanks, Deb. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.